Tan with intoxicating beauty, you'll see it's definitely not all it's about. Life's a beach. Tonight at 8:30. Weekend Fun Seeker. British celebrity chefs gear up for culinary combat, taking the challenge to make delicacies. Tasty Turkish beef versus appetizing lamb.
I need to get this lamb in the oven as soon as possible.
I'll tell you what, I'll do it. Leave it.
I think Richard might be getting a bit stressed.
Which dish will grab diners' attention? Chefs, put your menu where your mouth is. Tonight at 10.
This programme only reflects the personal views of the programme hosts and/or the individual contributors.
This is Newsline. I'm Michael Chigani. Tonight, Assistant Police Commissioner in charge of Operation Jacob Cheung Da Keung. Now, thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner Keung, for, or shall I call you Cheung, sir? That's what everybody says in Chinese, Cheung, sir. Now, thank you very much for coming to this show. You are the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of operations. Operations, as you know, is a very big issue nowadays with the Occupy movement. It's the first time we've got a police assistant commissioner, such a high-level person on this show. Now, the police have been sharply criticized, as you know, over the Occupy, the way you handle the Occupy protest. The latest news, a professional comments a political group is going to start a database to collect incidents of brutality by the police. The Civil Human Rights Front, which organizes the annual July 1st march, they are going to say they're going to take the case to the United Nations Committee Against Torture. When I hear the words brutality and torture and think of the way the police handled the Hong Kong protesters, how do you feel when you're accused of police torture and brutality? Do you feel that that's what you did? You tortured and brutalized people? Is that what you felt you did, the police?
Thank you for the invitation first to this session. I would like to say that as far as police are concerned, we just maintain law and order at the scene of disturbance. Perhaps you can recall from what happened initially when the first day, when the illegal occupation was first started on the 28th of September.
That's correct.
You may remember how heavy the police actually faced a confrontation from some
We all saw that on TV, yes.
So at that time, then police are actually left with no other alternatives but to use the minimum force to restore the order.
Would you say that's minimum force, Cheung, sir? Was that minimum force?
In fact, on each occasion, the use of force, the level of the use of force may be different. Very much depend on the circumstances and the judgment of the officer who are exercising their constabulary duty at the scene. So when we face confrontation, depends on how much aggression or violence these people are actually toward the police. Then we can decide what level of force. Sometimes we might need to use the baton to restore the situation.
You did, but you hit them in the head, not on the legs, and they say that was brutality.
Police officer actually will exercise the discretion at that time as to what level of force they have to use. So he's the one or she is the one who need to make a decision what to be used. For the use of baton, we fully understand the concerns of the people who actually raised some question about the use. But I would say that
You mean you raise the questions internally within the police?
No, we say people will raise questions about why the baton was used on their circumstances. But I would say that I fully respect the decision of our officers. At that time, if they consider they're under threat, they would like to maintain a distance between them and the protesters so that they won't suffer from any injuries. That might be one of the purposes why we use it. Every time when we use it, we have to follow the guidelines, the principles. Make sure that this is the minimum force at that time and proportional to the circumstances.
Well, tell me this, Mr. Cheung. You say the police feel that if they feel threatened, if they feel that there is violence among the protesters, then they have to use what you describe as minimum force, and the minimum force is determined by the individual person at the scene, right? Would you say that the police were threatened, and would you say that the protesters were violent even though they said they were peaceful? Would you say they were?
Perhaps you can recall some advocates, they vowed to be peaceful, they vowed to be non-violent, but unfortunately there are several occasions the case wasn't like that. Perhaps
so you said the protesters were violent?
Some of them were violent on certain occasions. For the past almost over 2.5 months, illegal occupation period, there were altogether 9 occasions in which we had to use the force. So in those 9 occasions, some protesters appeared to be very violent. They charged our cordon lines. They even attacked the police officers. So we are under no other alternatives but to use the minimum force to restore the order.
You know, you use minimum force several times, Jung Sir, but what exactly is minimum force? Is hitting a person on the head minimum force? Is firing tear gas minimum force?
Must
what
be
exactly
proportional.
is minimum
Must be
force?
proportional.
So it's not minimum force, but it's proportional.
Proportional as well.
It's not minimum because
not just the proportional, not just the minimum, but also proportional and commensurate with the circumstances. If the people simply use the hand to push you, perhaps you may consider that the force they're inflicting on us is not that high. But if you use other articles, hard objects, to hit officers, then we will consider we need to raise a level of force.
So when you use batons, it means then they had used a higher level of violence, which had caused you to use batons.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Now, you know, obviously the most important thing, Jung Sir, is the biggest issue here is the tear gas issue, which was used. And that was quite astounding. I think most Hong Kong people were not used to seeing that. Now, can you sit here and tell me that on that day, on September 28th, 29th, overnight, that the use of tear gas was absolutely necessary? Can you say that it was absolutely necessary?
Yes, it was absolutely necessary.
Why do you say that?
I can explain that. On the 28th of September, police cordon line were heavily charged by violent protesters. You may remember that they used the umbrellas to hit police officers, hard object throw at us. They snatched our news barriers, etc.
They snatched our
news barriers, actually the items, the police equipment.
Yeah. All the barriers.
But what I'd like to set the scene straight is that was the illegal occupation at that time, illegal behavior, unlawful behavior. They appear very aggressive and violent. They charge against us. At that time, police officers there had a duty to fulfill. That is to actually guard the area. This is our cordon line. In other words, we cannot allow people to go further. The reason why we used the tear smoke at that time is to maintain a safety distance between them and the police so that we can prevent the injuries. Imagine if they are charging us, we're under heavy attack at that time.
You felt that you were under heavy attack?
We're under attack, that is the case. If you don't resort to the use of this, possibly we could be run over by thousands of people. You can imagine under those circumstances, police officers or even protesters might suffer some serious injuries or even fatalities. So you would call that
proportionate force, not minimum force, though?
Minimum and proportional at that time. They are both. At that time, we considered that using tear smoke can create a buffer or safety distance so that less injuries could be sustained. So at that time, we considered that is the most viable means to create a distance, create a buffer. So I fully support the decision.
Would you do that again? Would you, if a situation like that arose again, would the police use tear gas again? You don't regret using it?
No, not at all.
You don't regret using it?
I don't regret.
You would do it again?
I think that was the right decision.
It was the right decision.
Based on what happened that night, after we used that force, that tear smoke, I can say that the situation was partially restored.
But not fully.
Not fully, of course, not fully. It was a long operation, you know.
But
that.
I know, it lasted 2.5 months. But tell me this, right after that you used it, you said proportionate force was used and you felt that you were threatened. There were other occasions when the police also felt threatened, I think when they tried to storm the government headquarters and so on. But tear smoke, as you say, others say tear gas, was not used. Was it a political decision to stop using tear gas?
We work things, we perform our role in accordance with the law. We don't have any political consideration at all.
But other instances, there were similar situations, but you did not use it.
Police officers at the scene are very experienced commanders. They are professionally trained. They should make a judgment as to under what circumstances and what level of force should be applied at that time. So if there was a time they consider that using other means might be more viable, more useful, or more effective, you know, they can choose that option.
So there was no higher up political authority who ordered you to stop it?
We work in accordance with the law. Our aim is to uphold the rule of law at that time.
But were you ordered by somebody not to use the tear gas?
Purely this is a decision of the frontline commanders who make the decision, which I fully support.
Okay, you know, some people want to have an inquiry into this incidents, either the tear gas used, or the whole way the police handled the Occupy protest. Would the police have any problem with an independent inquiry?
No, we don't have any problem with that. In fact, after each action we do, basically we will conduct sort of the internal inquiries into what aspect we need to improve, what can be done better, etc. We have an internal system. So, of course, all the actions we have taken are answerable to the public, answerable to the organizations.
So you don't mind that if there's an independent inquiry, you will not object to that?
We will give our full cooperation.
You will fully cooperate. Were there any, you know, we all saw a person being kicked by some police officers. There were incidents of excessive use by force by police. Would you agree that in some instances the police did use excessive force? Would you agree to that?
If officers was found using excessive force in fulfilling their role, they're subject to investigation. We will investigate.
Which is going on now, right?
We investigate. I need to assure you that all investigations will be conducted in a fair, impartial manner.
An open way.
An open way. So you know that there is a already established mechanism for people to report to us about if they believe that police officers are not doing right things, we will fully investigate impartially.
But would you say there were some instances where police did use excessive force?
We had a case. Police officers were alleged to be assaulting someone. That case was under investigation. I cannot comment further in this forum.
There were other cases too, would you say, or just one case?
We received some complaint against police cases. Each and every one will be subject to a full investigation.
Okay, now, you know, I know that there is a lot of distrust now between the police and the people. I'll ask you that right after the break. See you soon. Don't go away.
2015 news.